to a creepy disc that should play in the NFL, to a prank call that you shouldn't pick up. Here are the top 5 cursed SCP items that should be locked away forever, part 3. Number 5 on this list is SCP-048. I suppose that SCP-048 is a little bit of a stretch on this list because it isn't necessarily an object, but hear me out on this one. SCP-048 is basically the granddaddy of curses in the SCP Foundation. Now, there isn't an object or a room or a space that is cursed here, but it's actually a number. You see, the actual name itself, SCP-048, is what's cursed. And this is why it makes the list. Because if you were to label any item as SCP-048, then that item would automatically become cursed as well. If an item has been given the designation of SCP-048, then that item, through completely unforeseen circumstances, becomes destroyed, lost, stolen, decommissioned, or it's gonna have some other weird and unwanted thing happen to it. The SCP Foundation has had multiple important items get destroyed or lost by assigning them this designation and not realizing that there's a curse attached to it. Not only is it the item or thing that gets screwed over by this number though, it's also the personnel assigned to this item. If the Foundation labels something as SCP-048 and you're the unlucky bugger who has to watch over that item, then there is a 50% chance you will either be killed, be maimed, or be fired. This will be through some freak accident that is completely out of your control. In fact, there was one SCP doctor, Dr. Cortez, who claimed that this was all a bunch of superstition. He called everyone out on it and demanded that an unrevealed item be assigned to SCP-048. Well, as it would turn out, that SCP item that he referred to had earlier in the day accidentally been thrown in the trash. It would also turn out that later in the day, Dr. Cortez would have his arms horribly amputated in a freak break room blender accident. After this, the number was once again retired, and now no one has dared question its validity ever again. Number 4 on this list is SCP-093. SCP-093, even though it's an item, seems to really like what it looks like. The Foundation says SCP-093 is a primarily red disc covered from a red stone composite resembling cinnabar with circular engravings and unknown symbols carved at 0.5 centimeters depth around the entire object. Deeper cuts are present on SCP-093 with a depth of 1 to 1.5 centimeters. SCP-093 will change hue when held by a living individual. The colors taken by SCP-093 are still being researched to establish a link. Current beliefs holds that the changes depend upon regrets carried by the holder. If SCP-093 is removed from a mirror and not held by a person, it will seek out the nearest mirror-like surface. SCP-093 has been observed to travel in the largest possible circle while rolling, building up phenomenal speed. The mechanism of this acceleration is currently unknown. If any obstacle is between SCP-093 and the nearest mirror-like surface, it will use this momentum to punch through the object and continue on its course at this speed. It will only stop when a mirror-like surface is contacted. Despite tremendous impact velocities, no damage will be dealt to SCP-093 or the mirror. This thing turns into the greatest NFL linebacker in the world when it isn't either held or in contact with a mirror. It will literally bowl over or cut through anything to get in contact with a mirror again. Imagine if someone took this device and just dropped it in the streets of a crowded city or something. Boom. This thing flies across the street, cutting through civilians until it obliterates a car just so it can make contact with the side mirror. It's locked up right now with mirrors around it at all times for good reason. Number 3 on this list is SCP-117. SCP-117 is actually extremely useful. This item looks like a standard multi-tool device, like a standard Swiss Army knife sort of thing. The useful ability that it has is that it's actually capable of changing and morphing itself into the most useful tool it can be. So, what I mean by that is that if you have a job to do, like let's say you have to change a tire or something, well, SCP-117 will change itself into the perfect tool for you to get the job done. This obviously makes any handy person's life super easy and sounds like the best thing ever. Instead of having to lug around a toolbox and not even have the right tool for the job, you just need this one thing and it will do pretty much everything for you. There is, obviously, a catch though. The Foundation writes, after countless uses and testing with the SCP, it has been discovered to cause harm and possibly death to the user by means of absorbing iron, copper, calcium, and zinc from the user's body as long as the user is touching the device. Gloves seem to have no curbing effect on this, and the rate of absorption seems to depend on the tools used/created by SCP-113. It is advised that only Class D personnel are used in conjunction with this SCP to prevent death or injury to researchers. So basically, it's really easy to change a tire with this thing, but you're not going to be driving your car anytime soon if you do. Number 2 on this list is SCP-145. This is the worst phone call you will ever get. A standard 2002 model cordless telephone handset of Alcatel brand on its standard issue charging base. Not really that intimidating, right? Well, think again. The phone will ring periodically. If you pick up this phone, then you'll hear the voice of a very distraught female on the other line. She's so distraught because apparently she's just witnessed the most gruesome and horrible torture that you can imagine. What follows is a detailed description of all the brutal things that went down. Already pretty terrifying and depressing, but it gets even worse. Let's say you pick this phone up by yourself. Well, if you do, then that's most likely the last thing that you will ever do. Poof, up in smoke, you're gone now. As if you were never even there in the first place and you have been transported to a completely different location. Where that place is, no one has any idea, but we do know what happens to you. You now become the torture victim. So the next call that this woman makes, where she's crying and sobbing about what she just witnessed, all of the horrible pain she just saw, that's literally about you. Yeah, it's a pretty horrible way to go, guys. Now, if you are with someone when you pick the phone up, this won't happen. You'll just hear the voice, but you won't get transported to the torture chamber. The Foundation has actually tried to stop this whole operation before, but it's never really worked. They had somebody strap a bunch of C4 to themselves and then pick up the call, then explode when they got to the destination in hopes of destroying the chamber. It didn't work though, and my dude just blew up for no reason. Now, these calls go unanswered, which, based on the circumstances, is pretty much the right thing to do. And finally, number 1 on this list is SCP-882. SCP-882 is the creepiest set of gears you will ever run into. It's a bunch of gears that are totally rusted over and don't look to be in the best shape. Now, this is actually a good thing for us because these gears will start to move and do things if they aren't completely coated in rust. So, having this thing in seawater is very important. This isn't the scary curse about this thing though, it actually has some other unique properties that makes it very dangerous. The Foundation says any metal touching the object will become permanently affixed to it and over a period of a few days becomes a new part of the object. Organic material remains unaffected though. SCP-882 is extremely resilient with tensile strength and toughness above those of aircraft grade titanium alloy by weight, even though its composition appears to be a random alloy of iron, tin, gold, and other metals, some as of yet unidentified. Extreme focused heat must be applied over several hours to cut even a small portion free of the main assembly. Persons remaining in the vicinity of the object for prolonged periods have developed auditory hallucinations while near the object. Mainly the sound of grinding and clicking. The sound intensifies and is abated only by throwing metal into the object. Subjects in an advanced state of psychosis have thrown themselves into the object, resulting in almost instant death by crushing. The body is often drawn in and impossible to recover. An ever-growing body of metal that will trick my brain into ending my life. That's what this SCP is, and it is a big no thank you from this guy. But there you have it, guys. That is our list of the top 5 cursed SCP items that should be locked away forever, part 3. Please comment down below what you thought about this list and some other creepy SCP items that you guys may know about. Also, please hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching. I've been your host, Nicholas Playlog, and I will catch you next time.